Good afternoon. Welcome to Francophonie edition of 2021. Willkommen zur Francophonie 2021. Bienvenue à la semaine de la Francophonie 2021. As part of Francophonie 2021, ICK and the Swiss Embassy here in Pristina have partnered to bringing the first ever joint event called Cleantech Save the World, the Swiss Solutions as an Inspiration for Kosovo. Before we kick off this talk, it is my great honor to invite on stage His Excellency, the Ambassador of Switzerland to Kosovo, Mr. Thomas Kelly. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, and welcome to this important event. Yes, dear people from Kosovo, dear people from Switzerland, from everywhere you are listening us, chers amis de la francophonie. C'est quand même dans le cadre de la francophonie que cet événement se déroule. Can technology save the world? We hope to get not really a complete answer to that very important question, but some parts and bits of this important question. Yes, Switzerland normally stands more for cows, watches, chocolate, cheese, banks. But innovation is also very much part of our society and our economy, and actually a part of the success we have in our economy. So clean technologies, innovation, extremely important. Also alternative energies, if I may add to that in that context. Swiss railways, for instance, nearly 100% of the energy used by the Swiss railway, and there are a lot of trains, they use clean energy. Yes, research and development, it's 3% of our GDP that we invest in these sectors, in research and development, so very substantial. 4.5% of the GDP stems from the cleantech center. In the last 10 years, just not to bother you too much with the figures, but it's quite impressive. The startups, the funds raised by startups increased by 10 times in the last 3 years. So clean tech means also there is an opportunity also to gain money and to make money. Exports but Mr. Etter is gonna give some more details. The Swiss export sector also is very strong in the field of clean tech. 50% of these products go to Europe, 27% to the United States, and around 70% to China. Just to say, clean tech is also a very globalized sector. Yes, Switzerland and Kosovo, not only about clean tech, but environment in general terms. I use the opportunity to say that with the investments we performed here in Kosovo, provided 600,000 people with fresh water, which is, I think, a very good result. In the next 4 years, we are going to help, assist, work together with the government of Kosovo to develop sustainable climate policies. And of course, this is more the core issue we're discussing tonight. Just let me add the crucial experience we have also made in Switzerland, that we go through. It is crucial that the public and the private sector work together. And in that sense, of course, the Innovation Center of Kosovo, Mr. Uranik Begu, I really congratulate you and your efforts. It is great, this cooperation between the public and private sector, and it's crucial for the further success. So with that, thank you very much, and I wish you a very interesting, and to us all, an interesting event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador, and also in the name of the Kosovo and Albanian people and our country for your support since forever to our country, to our economy, and our people. Many complex environmental challenges lie ahead of all nations. Countries contribute to the construction of a more sustainable world, also by finding and sharing innovative clean tech solutions. Switzerland is wholly committed to the development of clean tech technologies to create a world that is more respectful of nature resources, to make the transition to renewable energies and ensure greater biodiversity. Kosovo can learn from the best examples, initiate such actions. This is also the purpose of today's event. Some of the Swiss interventions to cleantech include the ensuring of access to the clean drinking water, reducing the impact of climate change, maintaining biodiversity and developing sustainable agriculture, effective waste reduction, recycling and recovery, and also the emission-free mobility. Now it's time to introduce our guest speakers. We have Mr. Fabian Etter from Switzerland, who among other engagements is also the co-president of SwissCleantech from Zurich in Switzerland. We also have Qendresa from Geneva in Switzerland, is the founder and CEO of a company called Enfinit. Here on stage with us is Mr. Visar Ramajli, who is the CEO and managing partner of KIVO company and other companies as well. And Nikki Murseli, the founder of a startup called DyVo, a recycling startup based here in Pristina. Welcome to today's event. I would like to start this talk or this event with Mr. Fabian Etter from Switzerland, just to explain or just tell us what do we mean with the concept of cleantech, and also share some great and best examples coming out from Switzerland. Mr. Etter, the mic is yours. Just turn it on.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation and also for the opportunity to talk to you. When I received the phone call of the Swiss Embassy in Kosovo a couple of weeks ago, I was first a little bit surprised, but then also really honored as well, because 2 years ago I made a trip to Kosovo with a couple of friends of mine, and we spent a weekend there exploring the culture, meeting a lot of very nice, interesting people, and I keep this trip in very, very good memory. And that's why I was more than happy to say yes to share some of our insights with the audience, with the interested audience. And I absolutely agree with the ambassador that this is a great way of bringing private and public sector together, because cleantech is not only something that is based on private innovation, definitely that's one of the key drivers, but it also needs the right regulatory framework. It needs certain incentive systems. It needs certain long-term targets that also allow companies to invest. I prepared a couple of slides just to make sure that I can maybe get my message across. I would like to share my screen with you. I hope this is going to work. So, you can see it, huh? Okay, good. I'm not sure if it will. Now it works. Okay, sorry. Good. Let me first start with a short introduction of the organization SwissCleantech, the organization I'm heading since 2 years. SwissCleantech is kind of a business federation of sustainable or companies that are committed to sustainability. There is a certain difference between our name and the definition of cleantech, as we're going to see afterwards. SwissCleantech is an organization, a business federation that basically consists of around 500 members, companies, associations, representing around 40 different industries. Some of them you definitely know: Zurich Insurance, Swiss Re, PwC, IKEA. What do all these companies have in common? They basically have in common that they believe that there is also a huge business potential behind the term sustainability. And they all support our vision, the vision that Switzerland is committed to the Paris Agreement, and we want to position Switzerland as one of the sustainability hubs also on an international level. We believe, and this is one of my key messages that I would like to share with you, that of course private innovation is necessary, and basically there are a lot of entrepreneurs who drive the sustainability agenda in Switzerland. But SwissCleantech also focuses on shaping the right policies in Switzerland. For example, we now soon gonna have a public vote on a new CO2 law, a CO2 law that leads to certain incentives on CO2 that make CO2 efficient solutions more competitive than less CO2 efficient solutions. And here, this collaboration between fostering innovation and having entrepreneurs that really see the business potential behind, but also having the right policies in place, this is what SwissCleantech is all about. Then cleantech as such, cleantech as a certain industry in Switzerland. Let me now share some ideas and figures about this topic with you. The ambassador already mentioned it. It seems like we both refer to the same sources, which is definitely a good sign. Around 210,000 full-time jobs are represented by the so-called cleantech industry. Around 30 billion of revenue, around 5% of the GDP that was generated by the cleantech sector, which is quite a lot, which is more than agriculture, which is more than many other industries. And I think this is also something that was mentioned before. It's one of the fastest growing sectors as well. So there is business potential behind. But what do we mean when we talk about clean tech? I think it's quite important to have a certain common understanding what really belongs to it and what doesn't really belong to it. When we in Switzerland talk about clean tech, we have on one hand, one pillar, the services, finance, circular economy, consultancy services, but then the obvious ones like renewable energy, production and distribution, ranging from photovoltaic to smart grids, hydropower, especially in Switzerland, quite important, but of course also energy storage, one of the hot topics of the next coming decades, I'm sure, because we need to find solutions to store renewable energies in order to really make the transition to a low carbon economy. On the other hand, it's also about energy efficiency. It's about eco-mobility. In Switzerland, we have a very strong public transportation system, but also the whole question of e-mobility is gaining importance. Resources, something that Swiss companies started early on investing and also exported, like for example, recycling, water technology to make sure that to be able to clean water in a very efficient way. And last but not least, agri-tech. Here we see a huge development in the last 2 to 3 years. Precision farming, making sure that you really use the fertilizers in a very efficient way, using drones to make sure that you have an overview of the different production areas in an agricultural landscape. This is something where we do not really have a huge history, but in the last 2 to 3 years, we saw a lot of startups making progress and also finding money and investors. So this is where we come from. This is what we talk about, what we mean when we talk about clean tech. It's a sector of around representing around 5% of our GDP, more than 200,000 jobs represented by the clean tech sector. And these are the different pillars that actually made up this sector. This is a slide you probably cannot really read, but this is on purpose. It's a list of milestones that were achieved in the clean tech sector in the last 10 years. And I would like to highlight 2 of them. First of all, in 2011, we decided to phase out the so-called nuclear power plants in Switzerland. Nuclear power plants currently account for around 40% of the electricity production. And this decision led to a huge dynamics in the renewable sector. Why that? People and entrepreneurs knowing that, okay, we need to get rid of this 40%, we need to somehow be able to replace it, and the renewables are kind of the obvious solution. And then in 2017, a majority of around 60% of the Swiss people approved the so-called Revised Energy Act, an energy act that now serves as the regulatory framework for subsidies, for incentive systems, for the additional installations of renewable energies. And this law was quite important to make sure we have the dynamics, we have people investing in Switzerland, and we also see the progress needed to be able to replace the nuclear power electricity. Now, to come to an end, I would like to highlight 3 examples that could serve as inspiration. And I wouldn't say that everything is just bright in Switzerland. We also have a lot of challenges. There are also companies not really finding the right financing. We also have challenges that the consumers need to be better informed, these kind of topics. So don't take me that I would say everything is just perfect, but I think we have made some very specific experiences, and we know this collaboration between public and private sector is crucial. 3 examples, 3 companies that we're really proud of. First of all, It's a company called Inno Recycling. Inno Recycling is quite successful in recycling PET plastics. Why I believe this concept could be something also interesting for Kosovo. It's not only the company itself, it's the whole ecosystem that impresses me. Like collecting the PET bottles across the whole nation, making sure that they are then transported in a very efficient way, and then in 2 or 3 locations they are recycled in a very professional and very technical, very sophisticated way to make sure that most of these resources could be reused. And we have a recycling quota of around 90%. So 90% of PET bottles are being recycled in Switzerland. Second example, it's in the field of renewable energy, so-called solar folding roof. It's a roof that you can use in different infrastructure installations, for example, power plants or water installations. And you can actually, it's a roof that is flexible. So whenever the sun is shining, you can actually make sure it's spread out. And as soon as it starts raining, or as soon as it's maybe too windy, you can actually fold it together. And this technology, at first sight, it might seem a little bit easy, but it's quite complicated to make sure that you can have this kind of flexibility behind a solar roof like this, and also the long-lasting element that you can actually use it over the years, over and over again. And the last example, it's probably the one we are most proud of. It's a company called Climeworks. Climeworks is a spin-off of the ETH, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. It was founded in 2011 by 2 graduates, and they, at a very early stage, realized the potential of so-called negative emissions. Negative emissions means actually absorbing CO2 from the ambient air. And Climeworks over the year developed the most sophisticated technology all over the world in the area of negative emissions. They now are currently building a couple of installations to make sure that you can actually capture the CO2 from the air, and so also allow companies to not only reduce their emissions, but also to have so-called negative emissions. This company was recently financed. They hold a financing round, and they got around 100 million to further develop their technology and to scale it all over the world. I would like to end with Bertrand Piccard. Bertrand Piccard, he's the chairman of the Solar Impulse Foundation. You probably know him. He was the one flying around the world with a solar airplane. He's also former president of SwissCleantech, and he said encouraging the adoption of clean technologies and efficient technologies by setting ambitious environmental regulations will not only help protecting our planet, this is of course obvious, but will also represent a great opportunity for our economy to create new jobs and make more industrial profit. And maybe this is also one way Kosovo could go, this collaboration between regulation and innovation. And I'm more than happy to now discuss these insights with you and the panel. Thank you very much.
Well, when I saw the presentation, Can Tech Save the World? I would definitely remove the question mark in the end and switch the tech and can word both together to receive tech can save the world. Absolutely, and I'm a true believer on that. And the reason is that the world has advanced quite a lot, and I believe many issues that we're facing today are only addressable if we address it through technology. And technology is helping us today to develop solution much faster than we would conventionally have done. Nevertheless, developing the economy not always is done appropriately, and this is why we have many issues related to the negative environmental impact. And those issues need to be addressed, and not always you need a technological solution in order certain of these issues to be addressed and to kind of reverse. Nevertheless, when we talk about clean tech in general, and we talk about sustainability, we're talking about our environment, our surrounding, and everything that relates to it. When I was in 1998 in Switzerland, for the first time I went to a bus station, and I was looking at the schedule of the bus, and I saw that it written down 8:23 that the bus will be coming. You know, I could understand the 8:20, but I never understood the 3-minute schedule. And I was so curious, and I really was it was a cultural kind of clash, to say. And I was looking at the watch, and exactly at 8:23 the bus was there at the bus station. I saw at that time how advanced in terms of even tracking and technology Switzerland was. And it was quite impressive for me to see that really the world can function on time. When it comes to many of the solutions which are coming from the Switzerland, but nevertheless also from the developed countries, we see that these are contributing to the whole world. We are a small country, but we can rely a lot as well on these advancements that developed countries are kind of promoting and as well developing. When we talk about clean tech, energy in terms of the economy is one of them. Someone mentioned that Switzerland, Fabian just mentioned that Switzerland did get rid of their plants which are based on nuclear power. And we have a little bit the same problem in Kosovo, which is the coal. Absolutely, we saw that there is no backing for our Kosovo Sea project. And still, Kosovo is importing around 15 to 20%, depending on the season of its energy. And of course, the current energy is not going to be sufficient in order to address the industrialization or further development of our economy. If we say no to coal, that is the perfect answer in terms of environment. Is it the perfect answer for Kosovo in terms of the economy? I don't believe so. Because, of course, we are a country listed under number 4 in the world in terms of the coal reserves. But we need solution on how to address the challenges that production of energy using coal poses. And I think new technologies is something that we need to rely on, because we just cannot say that, okay, we're not going to do nothing about the coal. And when it comes to this, there are 2 agreements that the government of Japan has made with Australia and as well with the government of Canada in order to extract hydrogen from coal. And this is done on pyrolysis system, which is closed with no generation of smoke and waste and all these other stuff that comes out. And of course, Japan is using hydrogen for powering its fleets in terms of cars and buses and so on, because this is the strategy that they are following. And I think this is something that we need to think of, and the public and private partnership that His Excellency mentioned in the beginning. This is the way that where we need to work together with the government in order so these issues are addressed. Finding the balance between environment degradation and as well development in terms of the economy, it's never an easy thing, because entrepreneurs sometimes choose the easy path, which is sometimes even degrading the environment in order to generate fast and more appealing profits. So we need to address that, and the way how to do it is through policies. I am happy enough to say that Kosovo has a very good legislation system in terms of environment protection, but its implementation is a little bit not in the place where it should be. And because most of the laws are based on EU laws, and these are already effective in our country. I will give you one example, because the second thing that I want to discuss is water, which is of significant importance. There has been a study being done in Kosovo that almost 82% of all the wells throughout Kosovo are non-drinkable. This wasn't a case back 25 years ago. So everything what we did as individuals, but nevertheless as businesses, has affected this. You know, overuse of the pesticides has created a very unstable flora and fauna in all our rivers. Nevertheless, yesterday I saw a figure that there is a 78% of the total rivers throughout the world now have over limits of use of antibiotics, because we use antibiotics in our livestock, we use the antibiotics in our food system chain, and so on, which eventually this is doing the whole negative impact. And all this needs to be addressed. But when we established our factory, our recycling plant, we saw that our sewage system cannot treat the water that we eventually use during the cleaning process of the plastic. So we said, okay, we need to build a water treatment system. And since none of the municipalities have active water treatment system, we had to build all from scratch in our own plant. So mechanical treatment, chemical treatment, as well biological treatment, which is usually not the case in most developed countries, because those already have installed. So these advancements in terms of technology that you can definitely put even small scale can address lots of issues when it comes to degradation. And I think it's only a matter of thinking ethically and thinking in terms of sustainable environment. This is when we will do the things right. And I hope that these kind of examples are followed. So there is also the problem of transport. Most countries are following the idea of using cars and their fleets to use electricity rather than fossil fuels. This hasn't been addressed so far in our country yet, but I hope that this will be addressed very soon. And I think it is a matter of discussing and deciding whether we will be a country using hydrogen as our source of energy, and this is also clean, or either electricity, but we need to invest more in renewables. And when it comes to renewables, we already know that Kosovo already has one factory which is producing solar panels, and they have quite a big capacity to even cover most of the Kosovo need in terms of the solar energy, but it's a matter of investments, and nevertheless, it's a matter of the partnership with the government in order to move these things forward. And due to the technology advancements, we have 80% more efficient solar panels today than we had 10 years ago. So this is all coming from the technology. I will leave the floor to
yeah, so
now.
we'll be back also in the discussion part. So now we have to go back to Switzerland, and in Geneva, we'll introduce Ms. Qendresa Rugova. Qendresa, Uranik introduced us to Enfinit while we were drafting the agenda for this event. But could you please just tell us what Enfinit is, what do you do there, and with the team and the projects, ongoing projects, and also your plans.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So Enfinit is a financial advisory firm based in Geneva. It was established in 2016. The main focus is really to help project developers and other actors involved in developing renewable energy projects and energy efficiency to raise capital. So the main focus is to assist them in accessing the necessary channels and whether that is for sourcing equity during the project development phase or sourcing debt for the actual raising of the funds for the capex needed for the project. So in a nutshell, this is what Enfinit does, and it's primarily focused in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And maybe I should have started by thanking you for this invitation. It is quite a pleasure for me to be here, especially since there's obviously a link, me being from Kosovo and being having a startup, well, not so much a startup now, but a company established here in Switzerland. And I can attest to the fact that actually Switzerland is very vibrant when it comes to startups, and it has become especially vibrant during the past years when it comes to startups that are focusing in sustainability. Many of them covering a lot of areas that Fabian has already mentioned. So this is in a nutshell about Enfinit. I have prepared a short presentation that I would like to share. Just present now. Okay, I suspect, so you can see it. Okay, great. So I prepared a few slides just to, and I think it's quite a nice match actually with Fabian's presentation, the perspective that Visar gave from Kosovo, and what I thought of sharing was maybe a little bit of my experience, not only from Switzerland as well, but also from the work that I do, which is primarily focused in Europe.
Sorry to stop you,
yes.
But we don't see the presentation. Could you please reshare the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
No, not yet.
Okay, because here it says
yeah,
Google
it's
is
okay now.
sharing. It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I thought of taking more of a perspective of merging where is the world going, especially Europe, and how is that can be what are the implications, especially for Kosovo. So first of all, obviously we start with a policy framework that drives this global decarbonization. We all know that the policy framework, that one of the main policies is the Paris agreement in 2015, which aims to limit global warming up to 1.5, up to ideally 1.5 degrees. Furthermore, we have the EU commitment and quite a lot of quite ambitious efforts actually to decarbonize the overall EU economy. So these are the driving forces globally, I would say as well, quite especially with EU in terms of the leadership. When it comes to the main sectors, and here we have two focus areas. The first one is the renewable energy sources, where by 2050, about 60% of power is expected to be coming from renewables in order to meet, of course, this 2-degree scenario. This meeting such a high percentage, of course, means that a big share of such resources will have to be distributed generation. Distributed generation means that it is not centralized, but it is a power that is produced by your neighbor, power that is produced by rooftop solars on top of a rooftop or whatever that is not in a centralized fashion. Furthermore, we have the energy efficiency, which is another main pillar when it comes to decarbonization. Energy efficiency is very, very important. And I would say sometimes it may be even overlooked. As the renewables, there's quite a lot of focus on renewables. Energy efficiency can deliver us a lot of decarbonization by not increasing generation at all. In a way, it is a cost-efficient way which reduces your demand. So you are more efficient, you don't need to generate as much because you effectively reduce the demand that you need. And then, of course, this has a direct effect in curbing greenhouse gas emissions. How does this look like in a global scale? Bloomberg New Energy Finance has done a study that presents in up to 2050 how the generation mix would look like. And it's interesting to see that by 2050, about 60%, over 60% will be renewables, of which 48% will be solar and wind. Of course, with this, we see a decommissioning or a phase out of coal, nuclear, and while gas remains the same, maybe even a slight increase. So it's interesting to see that this is where we will see a big focus of solar and wind and renewables in general in the future, if we want to abide by the 2-degree scenario that mentioned earlier on a global scale. However, as decarbonization efforts, as I mentioned earlier, in order to achieve that decarbonization, decentralization of power generation and other efforts in energy efficiency are a must. It is impossible for a country to achieve that just by going with the same approach of a centrally planned energy system. That is the energy system of yesterday. That is not the energy system even of today and cannot serve what we need for the future. Here is a chart of, for example, total European generation in 2019. It is interesting here to see that it's split into terms of who is the responsible, let's say, where does the generation lie? Is it at the country level, city level, town, community, or homes and devices as you go further to the left? Of course, at the moment, most of it is generated at the national scale, so it is by countries. A little bit is also done by cities, and very little as we go a little bit more upstream, let's say. When we look into how the European generation will look in 2050, again, all in line with the national, whether it is the EU level or Switzerland, which similarly also has a 2050 decarbonization pathway, very similar, and it is included in the data here. When we look here, we see that there's a clear shift. A shift in the sense that generation will not be expected to be something that is done centrally, but needs to be shifted towards cities, towards towns, towards communities. So that is what decentralization really means. This is done through rooftop solars and behind-the-meter batteries, which will be able to help to decentralize the grid. Of course, by 2000 and as mentioned earlier, 50, most of the generation will be sourced by wind, onshore, offshore, and solar. And we can tell also that this is visible in the colors that is presented in the graphs, where we see the red, actually, which means nuclear, and it was also mentioned by Fabian earlier in the case of Switzerland that is being phased out. And here in the European scale, that is also clear that very little of nuclear, at least based on these projections, is expected. But the key message here is decentralization, shifting the power and the focus from a centralized system to towns, cities, etc. But going further, what does this mean? Distributed generation also disrupts the traditional value chain. Let's look at the value chain. This is how the value chain is. Well, in Kosovo, it definitely is the case, and most in the world, really, it's just being slowly shifted. Traditional value chain is the traditional system of moving from power generation, transmission, distribution, services, and then all the way to the end user. This is what we are used to seeing, and this is what is being challenged at the moment. Why is it being challenged? Well, mentioned earlier, distributed resources, so generation or any effort that is done at the whether it is the citizen, even can be. So the distributed resources, which is presented here in green, can be plugged in at any point during the traditional value chain, whether it is a service you provide, whether it is in the distribution, or certainly in the generation, for example, if you are a prosumer. This certainly has disrupted significantly the value chain and requires a new system to address. And this is where the digitalization comes in, and intelligent energy management systems. So distributed generation coupled with storage and digital control technologies have disrupted the traditional value chain. And this means also that whereby in the first case of traditional value chain, the consumer is really passive. In the second one, the consumer is really empowered and is active. You don't have to just wait and read your bill. You can actually be active, whether it is to improve your efficiency or maybe even to increase generation through rooftop, for example. But this is, again, can be citizen, it can be a town, it can be a school, it can be a government building, etc. So anybody can be an actor. So just to summarize here, from these points, we have the decarbonization. So we have a large share of intermittent renewables. Intermittent renewables, they are not predictable. Therefore, they're called intermittent. And this means that as the share of renewables increases, which globally we see it 60% by 2050, this challenges the grid, the stability, and increases network cost. So while there are positives, it brings up additional challenges that need to be addressed. In order to achieve the decarbonization, as mentioned earlier, decentralization is a must. Decentralization disrupts the value chain that was mentioned and requires digital systems. We already know, even in Kosovo, you have bidirectional meters that smart meters you can install if you're a prosumer. So that is an example of digitalization which needs to be in place. Otherwise, it cannot, the system doesn't serve the purpose anymore. And the last is the integration. So all of these need to be integrated and to manage. So by managing consumption, you eliminate waste, you further promote renewables as a source of energy. So all of these are very important elements for the future of the system. Now, I didn't want to go too detailed because, of course, a lot of you are quite well aware of the situation in Kosovo. In a snapshot, this is the situation in terms of installed capacity. Percentage-wise, about 87 is coal. However, when it comes to the gigawatt hours, coal, I believe, is 90%, represent 90% of the generation. So Kosovo is certainly dominated by coal-fired power plants, which, of course, has a lot of challenges when it comes to emissions and etc. But there are possibilities how this can be decarbonized and gradually, of course, with many solutions, and whether it is renewables or other clean tech. And lastly, I thought to kind of bring all these ideas home and see what this could mean for Kosovo's decarbonization process. So first, we have the clean technologies. It's very important to promote renewable technologies. This promotion has to happen with premiums and auctions, not the feed-in tariffs, which I know in Kosovo it's also being phased out as they are too expensive with the end consumers. Of course, wind, solar PV, biomass, biogas, all of these technologies, energy efficiency measures, and so these are the pillar from the clean technologies, and of course the storage is the last, which coupled with solar is very powerful. Then we have municipalities. When it comes to municipalities, solutions need to be promoted that give power to residential consumers, municipalities, towns, corporations, and SMEs. Corporation can buy the power directly. Of course, these are influenced by the price because the price is low and there's not a lot of incentive. However, that will not remain like that forever. So this will definitely help to empower a corporation to source a cheaper energy, for example, or a clean energy. An example was taken earlier by the Swiss Rail. So it's a choice whether you want to decarbonize your company, for example. Then there are the digital technologies and promotion of digital technologies. And I thought of this would be interesting also to point out this angle, given that this the IT aspect is being quite promoted in Kosovo, and even this event is being supported and cooperated by ICK. So I think that the digital aspect is quite important in Kosovo, and promotion of software and hardware technologies to empower citizens is very important, whether it is to monitor their consumption, to of course more complex ones that we can remotely control, but anything that helps to conserve energy and also generate on your own is very important. And then lastly is the business model. So all of these need to work together in functional business models that work, of course, for Kosovo in this case. So it depends on the situation. But innovative business models could be virtual power plants. You have power plants that are, you get combine a number of small producers and make them, through digital technology, they act as one towards the energy market. Quite innovative. You have energy service companies that are able to undertake energy efficiency measures, for example, through different models. Corporate offtake of power, I mentioned earlier, that's also quite an important, and it's something that can be led by the companies in Kosovo as well to make, if they want to make a statement, what kind of power they want to use in their operations. Then there's demand response, and any business model that promotes aggregation of projects, because that is sometimes a challenge in financing. For example, or integration of additional revenues, carbon offset. Kosovo is not a member of the Kyoto Protocol, but voluntary markets of carbon offsets are very popular at the moment, and Kosovo does not have to rely on only those methods. It can be also through other means, such as voluntary markets. This is it. I thought of just combining all of these together, of how I thought what kind of pillars would be important to promote clean tech energy or clean tech in general in Kosovo. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Qendresa, and we really hope that in the near future we can also advance our joint Green Enterprise program that we started in 2019. Now going back to Nikki, our last guest speaker, who also runs a company, a startup called DyVo. Yes. Nikki, I would like probably to hear for us and the audience about your journey. And we also would like to ask our online audience if they have any questions, just write down to the live stream link, and we'll try to answer some of your questions. And also the audience here who has the question, just raise your hand and we'll just hand out the mic. Nikki, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Span, for the invitation and the opportunity to present DyVo's work here. Thank you, dear Mr. Ambassador, and everybody is hearing us. So I am Nikki, and I'm an architect from Pristina. Basically today here I'm to represent our collective, which is called DyVo, and DyVo is a social enterprise that is based here in Pristina and is made up from multidisciplinary designers and artists and environmental activists. I would like to mention some facts about Kosovo, but I don't want these facts to be discouraging. I want these facts to be more as an awareness raising and call to action by all of us. So these are also the facts that have inspired our work at DyVo. And first of all, the bigger picture in Kosovo doesn't really look good for us, especially as youngsters who are all the time in search of better opportunities career-wise and especially educational. So this has led to a massive immigration of the young active force of Kosovars who are aged between 15 to 24. This also is due to the fact of high unemployment rates. For the young age, it's around 55% of the total youngsters who are unemployed, and especially 80% of those are women. The unemployment rates, of course, lead us to immigration, poverty, inequality, and discrimination. And this is not a good environment to be in, so of course we're searching for solutions out. Except this, also according to World Bank, the GDP of Kosovo is quite low, so it's $4,300 per capita. And we are rated as 4th after Moldova, Armenia, and Ukraine. So to these as well, there are also some other environmental factors who are contributing into our not well-being in Kosovo. So Kosovo, as also Mr. Ramajli said, has applied the laws of European Union, and in the bigger picture, it looks like it's going towards a more recycling attitude. But this is not quite true because the regulations are not really being followed and applied. This can be also because financially we're not where we're supposed to be to implement these regulations, but on the other side, it can be also a corruption theme that we can discuss sometimes else. But on the other side, we have this huge environmental degradation. And as far as this, it's also our responsibility as public that we have neglected it, and especially also our institutions. So air, water pollution, deforestation, and soil contamination are really causing high effect on the population. So on the studies, on the cases that were going to the Public Health Institute, from around 6,000 people who had respiratory diseases, 30% of them were definitely caused by environmental factors. And from kids, according to World Bank, from kids who are 5 to up, in the cases of a number of 400,000 cases of diseases, in the young kids, 80% of that is due to bad hygiene, bad water supply or contaminated water, and really bad environmental conditions. So these are some facts that really call our attention into action. And for these reasons, it's not anymore something that we can do with protesting with banners in front of our institutions. So it really calls us to give solutions that, and to have this, to grapple this messy problem with a different type of approach. So our collective, concerning all these factors, have started to think on how can we challenge these negative effects on our environment and on our everyday living into channeling them into solutions that could be for a better life here in Kosovo. So we are mainly working with educational programs that we are concerned with young designers and environmental activists who are getting these educational programs that are introducing them into circular economy and circular design, because it's always a responsibility of creative people to know that where their product is going to end up and is it going to cause any harm. Due to the way that we've been working until now, it's our mindset is more towards take, make, waste, which also implies a very irresponsible attitude towards natural resources and our environment. So it is our duty as the young generation to change this attitude and to try to bring more positive and solution-based ideas, especially also advocating about these solutions to national and local institutions so they get applied. Because also in Kosovo, due to some studies conducted by Kosovo Live Agency, 60% of the people have no idea about circular economy, not even any idea about the environmental damages that we're causing. And 72% of them believe that this is because of the lack of initiatives that come from Kosovo that might inspire them. So, you know, this is a call for that. So let's inspire the people here and, change these numbers into something more positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. We are running out of time since Mr. Etter needs to leave at 6. And also we have to close the event because there are some other events part of Francophonie taking place later on. I will now would like to open the mic for our audience if you have any question with regard to the topics that were being discussed. But also our guest speakers, if they want to raise any issues, since I'm not a clean tech expert, I more rely on your presentations, and if there are some important information that needs to be like highlighted, feel free to just ask for the mic. We have a question here in the fourth row. Microphone in, presentors.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Alban Avdule. I'm a second-year student here in Kosovo. I study economics, and recently I've started a volunteer program in partnership with Termokis Community Center. And this program truly focuses on cleaning the neighborhoods within Pristina, specifically in two of Pristina's biggest boroughs, which is Dardania and Bregu Djelit. My question is, how can we integrate clean tech with economy as well? Because I'm hearing economy, but not clear answers, since we truly need a reform in our education system to be able to integrate the two. So, for example, the gentleman in the middle, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, you mentioned that Kosovo has put to use European laws and principles. But these European laws and principles aren't really effective. For example, the customs in Kosovo, they're regulated in such a way where Kosovo's customs really put value in import rather than the native producer. What this has allowed for other countries within the European Union, for other countries within the Central European Free Trade Association, is to come to Kosovo and bring so much merchandise and only pay 10% in customs. So 10% in customs, you may understand that one product is different from another product. So for example, a pen is different from a pencil because a pen has ink and a pencil has graphite, so they should be taxed differently. This can also be integrated with how clean tech may work.
Yeah.
For example, if, I don't know if you understood my question somewhat, but that's pretty much about it. How can we integrate the two to have a better life for our communities?
Thank you.
Well, in relation to the laws, we do have good laws, and it's a good thing. The implementation, it's another thing, as we said, and both agreed that there is a little sometimes a follow-up in implementation in terms of the laws. But nobody prevents you from following that particular law. Basically, it's up to us to decide, although it might not be required by different authorities, it is the duty and responsibility of all of us to obey by them. And this is what we did as well. When we built our recycling plant, which is a 9,000 tons per year plastic recycling plant, so it's quite significant for the Kosovo. We knew that we are going to face many challenges as well when it comes to the sourcing of the material, because there is municipalities which hold the responsibility of collection, and these are regional companies created by the government itself and regionally owned. And then they don't allow interference in terms of collection, and they don't allow even interference when it comes to the potentially exploiting the landfills. So both are closed in terms of the waste management. And now we're waiting, and we are lobbying in terms of finding a solution jointly with the government, so we can first demand a separation at household, second have a separation in the municipality level, and then of course each recycler, be it a plastic recycler or metal recycler, will have its feed of material, and of course we will have less waste being generated in the landfill and less pollution in general at all. Kosovo is also lacking an incinerator as well, so which is a huge, big problem, because most of the waste, including the waste generated by its own water treatment systems in certain municipalities, which they started, but they are not basically in operation. They cannot treat their sludge. There's no way to treat, so they are again finding some pile of land and putting the sludge over there. So many issues to be addressed, but I think having a good laws, it's a good step forward. And I think all we need is to look forward and find a solution. And I fully agree that we need to have good initiatives. DyVo's initiative is a great idea. First of all, it's a matter of discussing about effects of waste in our environment, in our society, and nevertheless bringing up youngsters to find a solution to it. I use the opportunity to invite you as well to visit Rex. There in Rex we have created a room half of this size of this one, and it's dedicated only for children of primary school, so we can teach them about recycling and about circular economy. This is something that we took as an initiative on our own, and the idea is to collect and make all these youngsters collect plastic throughout a week so they can bring it in our factory and they can see the full process of recycling and as well see some finished products out of it, what happens from waste to worth, what we call it like that. So maybe we will extend that, and the next time when the Francophone week is, we can come up and do a presentation of what we did together.
Hopefully. Thank you so much, Visar, and for the question. Mr. Etter, I know you need to leave, so we are just giving the mic to you for like final comments or closing remarks.
Hey, thank you very much. I was really impressed by the three presentations of the other speakers, and also by the entrepreneurial spirit that I could actually recognize. And I think it's the whole topic of making sure that the citizens have enough knowledge, that they understand the interconnections between the topics, that they know what they could do to protect the environment, and that they also understand that there is a business opportunity behind protecting the environment. This is also, I think, quite an important mindset. We had to go a long way in Switzerland in order to make sure that our business leaders understood this relationship. Until recently, I would say until 3-4 years ago, we also had the majority of business leaders seeing climate protection as just as a cost factor. They basically saw, okay, we need to make sure that we do not have too tight regulations. We need to make sure that we have enough flexibility and entrepreneurial freedom, and then everything will be right. And it was very much kind of a left-wing topic. So the whole center and center-right political parties, they did not really address protecting the environment in an adequate way, in my opinion. And it took us a couple of years to make sure that the business leaders and the entrepreneurs, they started to understand doing nothing is even more costly in the long run, or even in the mid-run, than now investing in protecting the environment, making sure that biodiversity is treated adequately. But in special way, this is one of my core topics, climate change. If you do not really act now, then the cost will be much higher in a couple of years. And here I believe a couple of initiatives like ESA, your presentation about different pillars of decarbonization, I think I could absolutely support that. And these are, it's probably then more difficult to really put it into action than to present it on a slide, I know, but the whole direction you mentioned makes a lot of sense. These topics of sensibilizing and fostering and making sure that in the education, protecting the environment is also part of the content and is somehow treated adequately is also important. So I think you have a lot of ingredients mentioned before, and if you put that all together, and if you make sure that you also see that there is not only a need to protect the environment, but there could also be a business opportunity for Kosovo in the long run, then you get more and you gain more momentum, I believe. And if Swiss companies in collaboration, like know-how exchange, maybe in certain joint venture, could contribute to that path, then I would be more than happy. But there needs to be local the local knowledge. There needs to be a lot of local initiatives, but maybe some selected Swiss companies could also help, as they have been doing it in other sectors in the past.
Thank you. I wanted to quickly mention one thing, actually, that even in relation to the question that was raised earlier by the young gentleman. So when I first moved to Switzerland, in the supermarkets, they would always give free plastic bags. So they would give you the plastic bag and they would not charge you for it, for which I was surprised, to be honest. And then they changed the legislation, and then they made it for pay or you bring your own bag. And it is amazing to see how that little effort changes the behavior. So there are some things that can be done which are small, such as small as not using plastic bags when we go shopping. We can use recycled material to maybe create some more sustainable type of bags that can be used, which I personally use, for example. And these are small things, but they're quite, if you aggregate them, they would result in quite a lot of positive change, I believe. So just as an example. And lastly, I just wanted to mention, I know that my presentation and my expertise is really in energy, but I wanted to also mention something that is quite unique for Switzerland, and that is sustainable finance. Switzerland is a global leader when it comes to sustainable finance. What that means is making sure that the financial system is also sustainable. Little can be done, or not little, but not enough is done if only the actors, citizens, governments, whoever is contributing to this effect. We need to make sure that the financing mechanism or the financial system is serving this cause as well. And that is what where Switzerland is quite a leader, obviously for obvious reason, because it's a major financial global center. But there are some learning lessons as well there, and we need to make sure to start the conversation with the banking system in Kosovo to make sure that they're also held somewhat accountable for what they do, what they finance, and how they incorporate sustainability in their lending activities. And obviously a little bit further, not just a CSR type of activity, but a little bit more meaningful discussion with the banking system to understand how they serve the future of sustainability in Kosovo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Qendresa, Fabian, Visar, and Nikki for your time and commitment. And we will probably like to share the presentations you have used, Qendresa and Fabian, with our audience. Closing this event by also special thanks to Pauline, the Deputy Ambassador, with whom we have worked really hard on bringing this event to life. That's it. Thank you and stay safe. Goodbye, everybody.